Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Tunnel Vision. I'm your host, Ryan Abraham. This is a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I'll be joined along by Chris Trevino and Shotgun Spratling. In a minute, we are fresh off our road trip from the Bay Area, where we saw USC take down the Stanford Cardinal 41-28 up on the farm. So we're going to break it all down, what we saw from the press box, from down on the field, what the players and coaches had to say after the contest. We're live on 3 different platforms, on YouTube, on Facebook, and also on Twitter. If you have comments on either Facebook or YouTube, you can put them up there, and I will be able to put them up on the screen, and we can answer questions or just kind of discuss any of the topics that you would like to hear. And if you want to call live into the show, you can do that. Pick up that phone, you know the thing you text with and stuff. Yeah, you can actually call with that. 512-4-TUNNEL is the number. You can call in, and we'll put you in the queue, and try to keep it brief, and we will get you on the air and talk about whatever you would like to talk about with these USC Trojans. All right, so it was a long trip. We drove up there to the Bay Area. I know, maybe we shouldn't have done that, but it was fun. We had a good time. Coming back down, we recorded a podcast on the way back down, so if you want to get some of our early thoughts after the game, you can check that out on, look for the Peristyle Podcast on any of the podcasting platforms. But let's bring in the fellas right now. We got Shotgun and Chris Trevino. Guys, what's going on? How are you guys doing?
A little tired. You know, we've been driving all day. Well, Ryan's been driving all day. We've been sitting in the car all day. We've been here 2 hours, just chilling in the studio, trying to rest up, but a little tired, but excited to talk about another win for USC football, the first road win for Lincoln Riley in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long trip, but I coupled it with a flight to the Bay Area and then rode back with you guys just for the show.
It's not long when you're with friends.
Yeah, of course.
With friends.
So, yeah, we got the podcast, so check that out. Get our initial thoughts on that, a Helium Boys CarCast. Roadcast. And then we had a special guest with Ryan, our chauffeur joining us.
Ryan.
Pretty sure it was his first time ever being on a podcast, but, he did all right.
He might have a feature. He might have a feature in this.
But no, it's a good trip for the Bay Area, for USC, obviously coming away with a win. Some things, obviously, they got to clean up, but a lot of positives to take out of it. I mean, they dominated for, the first almost full 3 quarters. It was 41-14 with a minute left in the third quarter. And then, you saw some things where they need to clean up. They need to play a little bit better, execute a little bit better on offense in the second half. The defense, obviously, they struggled with some of the things that Stanford was doing, but Stanford kind of pulled out all the stops against them. And they were able to create turnovers once again, and it turned into big plays for them. And the offense answered. When they got those turnovers, the offense, turned around and put points on the board.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to get to. We got a lot to unpack. I feel like when we just talked about all this stuff on our podcast, we broke it all down, but there's a lot going on in this game. And so we'll probably break it down by each side of the ball, what we see. So if you guys don't know, Chris was on the field shooting video. You can check out the full highlights up on USCFootball.com, the field level highlights. And Shotgun Spratling was taking a lot of cool photos. So I got some cool pictures here we can put up during the thing. Jordan Addison, big game for him. So we're going to get to all that kind of stuff. And I was up in the press box, talking about the game, tweeting about it, posting live updates and things like that. So we're breaking it down from all sides. USC's big win over Stanford. And just kind of overall, I know there was some angst among some of the USC fan base, the way the defense was playing, the offense not scoring points in the second half. I just want to start off at the top of the show, give my thoughts and get the guys' thoughts too. This is one of those things where, Lincoln Riley mentioned it. What happened a year ago where USC gets pushed around by Stanford at home and they end up firing their head coach, Clay Helton? It was almost the exact reverse score. This was one where it wasn't a perfect game, but it was a Stanford team and David Shaw that pulled out all the stops. ran a completely new offense that only one college in the country runs, Wake Forest, this slow mesh kind of thing. They pulled that out of nowhere, really threw everything at the kitchen sink at USC, and the Trojans were still able to overcome it. The 35 points in the first half was just going to be too much for Stanford to overcome. So a lot of firepower from this USC team. Yeah, it wasn't great offensively the second half. The defense gave up 441 yards. But there were some explosive plays on the defensive side of the ball again. Chris, how many tackles for loss does this team have through 2 weeks? Is it 20?
20 tackles for loss.
20 tackles for loss.
That leads the Pac-12 by a good margin, and we actually thought you said that has to be a mistake. So we counted it. They had 12. They had 12 this past Saturday.
And four turnovers each week, 8 turnovers total. 3 defensive touchdowns. There was a fourth one that got called back in this one. So I get I never really heard the term, and maybe I just don't remember it, but the explosive plays on defense. You hear about that on offense, but this was a defense that gave up a lot of yards. They gave up some points, but they had enough explosive plays that seems to match well with this offense that has explosive plays. So, I mean, for me, it's just sort of like you got to look back and go, you're 2-0. You won your first road game. You won your first out-of-conference game against the team that was gunning for you. I mean, David Shaw was looking for this win, so I think since Lincoln Riley got hired. So this was a 3-9 Stanford team last year. They wanted to get off the snide, and they knew beating a really hyped-up USC team would have done that. And it fell short. They weren't able to do it. So if you're a USC fan and you're kind of upset, I would say my recommendation would be, hey man, this is a pretty good win. Just the way it happened, I would say take this one and move on to Fresno State.
I would say kind of what you just said. Embrace the good that came out of this game, the good that you saw. Because if you want to put it in perspective, just think about last year. Just think about all the bad from last year. Embrace the good things, the great things this team was able to do on offense. And, those turnovers on defense, I know it's not always pretty. We'll probably get into a little bit more, but just embrace the positives that you get to see with this USC team. Yes, this team knows that was not a complete effort. That was a big talking point after the game. They know they have to finish. The staff knows they have to finish. Lincoln Riley knows they have to finish. They have a lot of things to fix. To be a championship team, you have to be 4 quarters. You have to fix the run defense. You have to be able to get more consistent stops. But just take the win for what it is. I mean, going into it, it was a weird Saturday. A lot of teams ended up taking major L's throughout the country. Baylor took a big loss, overtime loss to Baylor. Texas A&M getting App State by App State. And then Nebraska, Georgia State, Clay Helton, the Fighting Clay, Georgia Southern got done in by the Fighting Clay Heltons. And someone else top 10 lost, didn't they?
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. I was watching that game. I had a little alcohol in me. I forgot at the tailgate. But Notre Dame got done in by Marshall at home. So very weird Saturday. A lot of top 10 teams were getting nixed. But USC, they came in, they handled their business. Wasn't as pretty as you'd like it to be, but they got out unscathed, 2-0, up to number 7 in the AP poll. So I think you just got to embrace the good. Yes, there was some bad, but they're going to try to work through that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the defense, and there's still a lot of things to clean up. One, they need to get healthy on the defensive line. They had Dejon Benton miss the game, so you're missing a starter in the middle of your defensive line. They moved Tuli Tuipulotu inside. He had 4 tackles for loss in the game, had a sack late in the game to help kind of clinch the game along with Solomon Byrd. Solomon Byrd comes in after Romello Height gets injured. Has a nice game. He had a batted ball at the line of scrimmage. He had a couple of sacks. He didn't play very much in the first game, and suddenly he comes in and makes an impact. They've got to get more out of Corey Foreman. I mean, the fact that he was behind Solomon Byrd is a little bit disconcerting if you're a Corey Foreman fan and expecting him to make a big impact this year. But they also, Tyron Taleni, we noticed we're going through and looking at some different things, realized he was there but did not play. So was he banged up? We have to assume that he was banged up rather than not, just being told by the coaches, like, you were just not going to play today.
Played well against Rice, had a couple sacks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it would be very surprising if they just kind of benched him for performance after that. So got to assume that he's injured. Obviously, we can't report on injuries from practice, and Lincoln Riley's not said anything about him. So, I'm assuming that he is injured there. But you got to get healthy there, but that is the concern because the defensive line depth is so thin, and you need some guys to also step up. You have some guys like Kobe Pepe and Earl Barquette who haven't played yet. There are only a handful of scholarship guys that are completely healthy that have not played in the first 2 games, and those are 2 of the guys. So you need some guys to continue to step up. You need Brandon Peely to make a couple more plays for you, and I think if you get that, as this team, as this defense learns the defensive scheme more and more, because I think they're going to get better and better as the season progresses if they can stay healthy. Then if you can get healthy on that defensive line, I think they continue to get better. And like we said on the podcast and we said on Instant Analysis yesterday, this was a brand new offense that Stanford unveiled, had saved this for USC. We're not going to show this against Colgate. We're going to spring this on USC and force them to make adjustments in game. And USC did a decent job with it. Now, it was a bend but don't break type of defense, and Alex Grinch has done that a little bit the last couple weeks. But then you force those turnovers, and it starts with Max Williams and it starts with Mekhi Blackman. Those two guys were combined for 3 of the turnovers. Each of them had an interception. Max Williams with a big hit by the goal line on Emmitt Smith's son, EJ, to force the fumble. Mekhi Blackman dives into a pile. There's several offensive linemen around, and he dives underneath those guys and pulls it away from them. So those two guys combining for 3 of the turnovers. Jacoby Covington coming up with another one. Tuli Tuipulotu showing the hustle, the effort to get out to the sideline to hit, I think it was EJ Smith again, to cause that fumble. So you give credit to the defense for the plays that they're making. Now, can you raise the floor of the bad plays? And that's what Lincoln Riley said after the game was, we're making some bad plays. You're going to have some mistakes every game, but can you raise the floor to where your bad plays just aren't as bad? You're not giving up those chunk plays on it. Your bad play is, hey, we gave up 5 or 6 yards, rather than, hey, we gave up a big play down the field or we gave up a touchdown. So those are the things they've got to clean up on the defensive side. So there's definitely stuff they need to work on. And I know some fans are freaking out about it. Oh, I can't believe this. Where other fans are looking at it and realizing you went to Stanford, a place you haven't won since 2014. You went and dominated the game for the most part. You put up 40 points, and some people are still complaining about the offense in the second half. Some people are complaining about the defense. But you have to also look at it, like Ryan said, of where was this team at a year ago when they played the Stanford team? They were searching for a new coach on this day, because Clay Helton had been fired on the Sunday. So, I think that's the difference in 12 months right now. And you kind of remember that and put that in perspective rather than jumping on one game and saying, this team can't do this or can do this or whatever it may be. You got to look at the totality of everything, and especially if you're looking at it at a 12-year spectrum. Things look a lot better than they did 12 months ago.
Yeah. Excuse
me, 12-month spectrum, not a 12-year spectrum.
12 months ago. And
could be a 12-year spectrum. It's been a while since USC was good.
So we mentioned it a couple of times, and I'll go over it real quick for everybody, because we mentioned this on Instant Analysis, and we talked about it on the podcast we recorded in the what was it, the Roadcast? We call it,
on
Chris?
The 5.
On the 5.
Literally on the 5.
The 5 freeway driving down here. So I'm friends with Bruce Feldman. If you follow him on The Athletic or on on Fox. He wrote a really interesting piece over the summer about coaching his son's Pee Wee Football League team, and was he didn't want to be the head coach. They were kind of thrown into it, and he asked Dave Clawson, who's the head coach of Wake Forest, about the offense that they run, because there was an accidental play that kind of looked like this slow mesh, which what you saw Stanford run on Saturday. There's kind of the delay when you're about to hand off the ball. You can run play action off of it. You can run reverses, things like that. We saw Stanford do all that stuff. But Wake Forest is the only team in the country that runs this offense. They were in the ACC championship game last year. They've won a whole bunch of games the last couple of years. It's a really cool offense. And, Bruce's son and their team end up winning the Super Bowl for their Pee Wee League, and they ran a lot of slow mesh concepts. But I texted with Bruce after the game, like, does anyone else in the country run this besides Wake Forest? And he said, no, not to his knowledge. And, Bruce ran it with his son, Wake Forest, Dave Clawson, they run it. And then David Shaw in the offseason decides to run this offense that nobody else in the country runs outside of Wake Forest. No one saw it. They played a game last week against Colgate. You didn't see it then. So that's why it was sort of like, if you want to get critical of the defense, it's sort of like playing Air Force, and you're like, oh, they ran for a lot of yards. Yeah, this is what they do. It's like a triple option kind of team. So yeah, there were definitely some problems, and I think it took them a while to kind of realize that the running back was getting the ball a lot. And then I thought Stanford did a nice job when USC was kind of collapsing on the ball carrier. They ran a reverse off it, or if they were doing a play action, and then Tanner McKee come back and throw and find somebody. So this was, I get it that the USC defense gave up a lot of points, gave up a lot of yards. But they forced a lot of, some big negative plays, which was good. They forced 4 turnovers again, which was good. And you were really going in blind. Like, anything you prepared for the Stanford team, you had to throw out the window right away. So I wouldn't be too critical of that. But just so people know, if you didn't realize, hey, what's this slow mesh thing? They pulled that, I don't know. They pulled it out of nowhere. It'd be interesting to see how he got it. We have no indication that he actually talked to Dave Clawson and got advice from them on how to run it. They must have watched film and really pulled this one out of thin air. This was a 3-9 Stanford team. There was a lot of criticism. David Shaw didn't fire any assistant coaches after going 3-9 last year, but he said they were going to change schemes up, and we didn't really see it last week against Colgate, but you saw it in this one. They changed their defensive front. They went from a 3-4 to a 4-3, so that was completely different. And then they're running the slow mesh offense, which was obviously completely different than what they did before.
Maybe he saw it at one of Bruce Feldman's Pop Warner games.
He could have.
Just driving by, he's like, I'm going to check that out. And he was like, I got an idea.
Yeah, looking over there, the quotes from his press conference yesterday after the game, and he said that they had saw it, and it was one of their off-season projects was to put in this offense. They went through, watched all the film, watched what they did, watched what they said about it, and thought that it could fit their system, their quarterback. And basically the thing is, you're putting the emphasis on Tanner McKee is to make a decision. Is the safety moving out, or is the linebackers, are they clearing out space? Then you give the ball to the running back. If the safeties or linebackers are coming up, you want to attack with those wide receivers. And it kind of fits their personnel because it's, hey, if those safeties do come in the box, then you want to take those one-on-one matchups, and that's what Stanford loves, getting those one-on-one matchups with their big wide receivers. We're going to throw the jump ball on the outside, and we're going to get pass interference calls if we can't catch the ball. And the Pac-12 referees helped them in that regard. I felt like there were a few penalties out there on those pass interferences where I wouldn't have thrown a flag, but they did, and that's the way that Stanford has run their offense the last few years, is to live and die by those jump balls on the outside. Well, this gives them something to build off of while still being able to attack with that same style of play that they like to use as far as those outside jump balls and with their personnel that they have. So now they can get back to running the ball. This maybe frees them up a little bit on the front. They don't have to just be mauling people. You can out scheme teams a little bit and out patient them, and that's what that slow mesh does. So it was an interesting concept for them to break out, and like David Shaw says, he thinks it fits their personnel. So they saved it, waiting for USC, and then said, okay, let's unveil it now. And they unveiled not just, okay, this is a new concept, this is what we're going to do, but here's the wrinkle off of it. Here's the end around to the tight end. Here's the reverse off of it. All those type things that they were throwing in there to try to, to throw USC off. And they gained a ton of yards. And gained over 400 yards. Granted, they had 80-something plays, so the yards per play is not as high as as the total yards makes it seem. So the defense, they gave up a ton of chunk yards. They didn't give up the huge explosive plays, for touchdowns or anything. But definitely a lot of things for USC to clean up. But you also have to, take it into perspective and say, okay, this is brand new. They had to make an adjustment on the fly. You saw that Stanford was going a lot of tempo early in the game, not necessarily so much in the second half, because when you unveil something, you spring something on team, you don't want to give them time to make that adjustment on the sideline or, make a call, make some adjustments, let the coaches think about it. So they were just trying to attack as much as possible early in the game. And then you saw later in the game when USC made some adjustments, they started slowing things down and trying to, figure out the right plays that they wanted to run.
Are you winded?
Nah.
He just went and went and went. The slow match was giving me issues.
Yeah.
I was filming from the back. I was like,
yeah, what did that look like, Chris?
At first, I didn't realize what was happening. I was like, he's taking a long time to pull that ball out because he's just like holding it there. And then I got a bunch in week one with Caleb Williams, then Lincoln Riley offense, multiple times where I was going this way. Nope, ball's over here. This time, they got me a couple more times, a little bit less. I was a little bit cleaner for Lincoln Riley's offense, but the slow mesh was just frustrating me at times. I was like, all right, where do I got to go? Are you going to throw it? Or are you going to – so I can't imagine what it was like for the linebackers and the defense seeing it from their perspective. So I definitely got a full back view of the slow mesh.
And with a defense like USC is super athletic, you want them to try to do too much. And the slow mesh makes you just be super patient, stay in your gap, don't try to do too much, focus on your assignment. And with just like the Pete Carroll teams, that's something you want to do. You want to hit them with that misdirection. You wanted to get them to flow too far over on some actions and come, to get the cutback lanes and stuff like that. So that's what they were trying to do with this defense. And so USC had to make some adjustments with it. You saw them throwing some corner blitzes in there, some slot blitzes, some different things to try to mix things up. And you saw at the last play of the game, actually Solomon Byrd kind of drops back and just waits. and waits to see what Tanner McKee's going to do. And then when all the offensive linemen go to block someone else, he takes off and attacks Tanner McKee and is able to get the sack on that final play, just kind of being patient and waiting for the running back to clear out and go on a route and then attack, and was able to get that sack, to his second sack of the game, to end the game, basically.
Call it what it is. What's the official name for that?
When a linebacker does, it's more of a green dog blitz.
Yeah, just say green dog. I just like it when you say green dog.
Green dog blitz.
It's not necessarily when you have a defensive lineman that's kind of backing up a little bit. So I don't know if that's technically the term on it. I'm not a defensive coach, so.
So let's talk on the offense a little bit, and we're going to get to a whole bunch of your questions and stuff too. We're just going to kind of give a little recap of what's going on. Pretty impressive start. Caleb Williams, through his first 5 drives of this game, never was the quarterback at USC and had a non-scoring drive. I mean, it was all touchdowns and 1 field goal last week, and then his first 5 drives were all touchdowns until the half, just before the half. Didn't even face a third down in any of those. And then, of course, in the second half, USC only scored 6 points, 3 different field goal attempts. USC went, Dennis Lynch went 2 for 3 on the field goals. And, did they take the foot off the gas a little bit? Whatever. I mean, there might have been some complacency. We can kind of talk about all of that. But it was a pretty impressive overall offensive performance. Jordan Addison, 172 yards, 7 catches, 8 targets, that 75-yard bomb. I mean, he looked like the Blitnikoff Award winner for sure. Just so smooth out there. Travis Dye going on for over 100 yards. He had that one. Chris had a great video of the big hole opening up on his long touchdown run. Mario Williams had some really nice plays. So, I mean, the star players that you're talking about, and to be fair, I mean, a lot of them were transfers, right? Caleb Williams, super efficient day. Jordan Addison's transferred in. Mario Williams transferred in. Travis Dye transferred in.
Solomon
Bird. Well, we're talking offense right now. Solomon Bird was transferred. A lot of transfers had big games, so the roster completely being overworked is a big deal for this. But just kind of get your thoughts on how the offense did on Saturday.
This is not me saying that from week 1 Rice that we didn't feel like we saw like those big-time performances from some of USC star players. Jordan Addison had 2 touchdowns, but it wasn't like a bananas game or anything. Like 2 touchdowns against Rice, that's kind of expected. Caleb Williams, lit it up. Only had 2 incompletions or something like that, but he was pulled out pretty early. Didn't go the full game. Travis Dye didn't have a big game. I think he had like 40 yards total. Didn't have a touchdown, but here was kind of one of those games where you saw kind of those stars that we knew were going to be stars come to play. Jordan Addison blowing up, 170 yards, something like that. Another 2 scores, that big 75-yard bomb where he just made a preseason first team cornerback look silly down the field. We were watching that play. You said just so smooth. Just so smooth, Willie. Travis Dye, his first 100-yard game as a Trojan, just making all the plays, running hard. Big hole for him up the middle on that touchdown. His first touchdown as a Trojan. Big game for him. Caleb Williams, 4 touchdowns, looking like the Heisman guy that we know he is, making moves, throwing stiff arms, saying, "Get off me, little man," things like that. So you saw your stars come out and play in a big road game, and we were waiting for this kind of performance to see all these guys, this star power come together. Again, not saying that the star power didn't come out against Rice, but this is a bigger moment, a bigger road game, a place you haven't won since 2014, and it was nice to see those guys step up and have those big games in a game like this.
I think it just shows the explosiveness of this offense, how you're going to have different guys be able to step up every game. Raleek Brown, was banged up a little bit at the end of last week. He had a couple carries in this game, I think 4 carries, but didn't do too much. Didn't have that explosive play. Didn't matter. Because Mario Williams had multiple explosive plays, whereas last week he didn't have those necessarily. He had the reverse and that, a couple catches, but nothing big. And you see what Jordan Addison can do down the field. We didn't see that the first week. USC didn't really try to do that. They didn't try to attack downfield, but he got one-on-one coverage out there and turned around Caillou Blue Kelly, who's a really good cornerback for Stanford, beats him a couple times on those deep balls, shows what he can do. But there's also Brendan Rice, if he doesn't get called for the offense pass interference, he's got 2 catches for 40 yards at least, maybe 45 or so. He's got that big body out there. You can go up and get a ball. Saw Lake McCree get in the end zone for a touchdown. You saw Taj Washington in the first game. You didn't necessarily see him in this game. There's so many weapons that USC can use and use in different ways. It's going to be a different guy every week. Now, Jordan Addison's probably going to be one of your guys every week, but you're going to have like 3 different guys that are going to have some explosive plays each week. And, I think it's going to just be a mix-up. I talked to Travis Dye after the game and asked him about, the running back rotation. He said, we do have a set rotation, but it's, whoever gets hot is going to get the rock. And that's how it is. They know that, if someone gets going, then that person's going to get it. And give credit to the offensive line for that touchdown he had. He basically had a semi-lane to run through. He was asked after the game, what'd you see on the run? He just kind of chuckled. He said, I didn't see anything but the end zone because there were no defenders anywhere around him. I think you noted that he kind of looked around like, wait, is there someone supposed to be around me? I feel like there should be a defender somewhere around here, but there wasn't because the offensive line kind of wiped out everything on that play. And I think the offensive line is only going to get better, and you're going to see some different things. And so creative with some of the play calling. They run the GT pull is what they call it, which is a guard tackle pull to the opposite side. It's a counter play to run, pull those guys around and be able to create a hole. Well, they did that, and then they ran the tunnel screen to the opposite side of it off of that. That's the counter to that play. Well, then they ran a counter to the counter of the play by running the motion. They play action that they were going to run the GT pull. Then they faked to the other side to the tunnel screen, and then they went back to Travis Dye, who's wide open for a screen, and the two blockers that were coming around normally, they're out in front blocking for him, and he picks up 10, 15, 20 yards on a easy catch. So just the creative things that they're doing with this offense and mixing things in like that, I think that played a little bit into what happened in the second half. I feel like they had some set plays, like these are the plays we got to have for this game. Once you're up by big, let's just save some of those plays that we've kind of designed for this week. We'll just save those, not put them on film, and save them until next week or the week after when we see that matchup again. We think it would be a good fit. So I think they didn't keep their foot on the pedal in the second half, and I think that went to the play calling as well as you felt a little bit of a little bit of air let out of the sideline for USC, and some of the players talked about how they didn't come out with as much intensity in the second half. So they've got to clean that up. And Travis Dye said, yeah, it's a learning moment. It's a teaching moment for those younger players to be able to say, hey, we've got to put our foot down all the time. We've got to put our foot on the opponent's throat and finish them off.
All right, guys. We have some live callers in the queue already.
Oh, boy.
You ready to take some calls?
I predict Dave from Iowa will be on the call.
He's on there?
Yeah.
We're going to go with, let's see. Let's go to Luke. Luke, you are on live with Tunnel Vision. How you doing, man?
Doing well. It's good to talk to you guys again. I went to the Stanford game yesterday, right next to the Stanford band. They weren't happy about that. Almost got kicked out. But,
nice.
Yeah. Just looking at the stadium, it wasn't really packed. I'm just wondering your thoughts on this coming up game and thinking, is it going to be a sellout?
Thanks for the call, Luke.
This is your guys' territory. I'm terrible with attendance and figuring out things. It's not supposed to be as hot, I believe.
It's a night game. 7:30 should be nice and cool. The heat wave is gone.
That's what I'm saying. So the heat wave's gone. So even at 7:30 last week, it would have been still crispy. So I think it'll be cooler, more mild temperatures. But I don't know. What are you guys? What are your guys' thoughts on potential sellout?
I feel that excitement building with the fans. Just all the fans that talk to us at the game or, shouting at us from the sideline. I expect a really good turnout. 60,000, around 60,000 plus came out for a season opener in a blistering hot day. They showed out. They had energy. They had enthusiasm. Yes, they left a little bit early, but they were there. They were rocking early. So I think, 7:30 start. Fresno State is a good team. They have an experienced quarterback. I think this will be another good test for USC to face in terms of an offensive opponent for that defense. I'm expecting a good crowd. Let's go. I don't know if it'll be a sellout, but I would expect I predicted 70 for the season opener. I was off by 10,000, but I'd probably go back again to like 70, 75 maybe.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. I always go way over, so don't judge.
That's okay.
Anything, but
yeah, I think you could get in the high 60s for this one. Fresno State's going to bring fans. They do, so that's going to help for sure. That'll help the numbers. It's a late game. Someone said there's a big pay-per-view fight that night. Canelo, I think, is fighting. Whatever, I'm just saying. But, yeah, I think, something in the high 60s would be good. Lincoln Riley sort of made a little reference to, being excited about this win and wanting to get more people out in the Coliseum. I think they're going to build on the Rice game. It shouldn't be too hot where, they're bringing in, a dozen bottles of water for everyone just to try to like stay hydrated and stuff. So yeah, I think you're going to get I think it's going to be, you're going to look at the crowd and go, that's going to be a good crowd. I don't think it'll be a sellout though.
What was I going to say? I blanked. Sorry. I blanked. I was just trying to look up this thing. It's supposed to be like 80.
80? Okay, that's not too bad.
By the time kickoff, it's going to be like 70. It's going to be like 70 degrees.
It's going to feel great out there.
It's going to feel great. Get there early, tailgate, pretty much all afternoon going to
As long as they'll let you. There's a certain
As long as they'll
window
let
now.
you. That's fine. As long as you let you. But I expect a good showing for the first night game of the season.
All right, we got another call. I don't think the name is up there.
Oh.
Who's calling and where are you calling from?
This is Brian. I'm down here in South Georgia. I was calling and asking, do you think because we showed so strong in the first half that they're just trying to pick on us second half, not realizing what it took from what happened from last year? And do you think Corey Foreman is going to ever show out?
Thanks for the call, Brian. What do you guys think?
I mean, I don't know exactly what he was asking as far as the first half, second half. I think that they have to play better in the second half. They have to put things together and be more complete. And, the players talked about, they didn't come out with enough intensity in the second half. They kind of let their foot off the pedal, and that's something they have to do better. So I think that, again, it's a learning experience and something that this unit, some players know that. Travis Dye knows that. But can you then, explain that to the younger guy? Can you teach him up? Can you teach the next guy up? That has to happen, and sometimes you have to experience it for some of those players before they totally understand. So it's good to get that experience out of the way in a game where you're dominating 41-14, but you got to play better than that because there's going to be games where you're in that are going to be much closer going forward.
Yeah.
And as far as Corey Foreman, I mean, God, you sure hope so, just with that God-given talent and ability. But it starts in practice, doing those things in practice where, the staff makes it harder than it is on Saturdays. So if you're stepping up there, that's where you're going to see him get the opportunity on game days, on Saturdays. But he just has so much talent. You just have to see it more consistent. There'll be plays where you see it in practice. It's like, whoa, that's why he was a 5-star. That's why he was considered the number 1 overall prospect. But the ability to do that is what separates anyone at that talent level from being, a guy who's not finding it at college to being a dude at college. Is finding that ability to hit those consistencies, do that over and over, do it in the big moments when they need you on third down or whatever position you are, I don't know. But just as a pass rusher, just to be able to get that big sack in the moment or have that big pressure when they need it, things like that. It's being able to translate it from doing it in practice to doing it in a game and to be the guy that steps up in the moment and use that talent to impact the outcome of a game.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that, we have several questions about Corey Foreman. Is Corey Foreman behind Solomon Byrd at defensive end? Did Corey Foreman play? What can you guys tell us about Corey Foreman? I know Solomon Byrd was getting more snaps. Corey Foreman was in front of Solomon Byrd last week. Corey Foreman was behind Solomon Byrd this week. Now, did either one of those guys make so many plays last week to deserve one spot or another, or make so many positive or negative plays? No. So that tells you it happened in practice. And that's been the knock on Corey going back to last year, is that he's not getting enough done in practice. Now, part of it was he was banged up. He's got to learn how to practice and how to be consistent at practice to earn the coach's trust so that they will play him on Saturdays. We've seen the flashes. Now he's just got to be that consistency. Just like Chris talked about, he's got to have consistency in practice first so that he can then put forth the potential consistency in a game on Saturday. And the fact that Romello Height went out with that shoulder injury, and we've had questions asking about him. We don't have any injury updates necessarily. He went out in that game, as well as Cortland Ford went out. Both those guys look like it could be injuries that could be something that we'll keep an eye on going forward as much as we're allowed to, but something that could be a concern for them next week, definitely. Romello Height, the question is going to be for me, is that something that's going to bother him all season, or is it something you can sit him for a couple weeks and get it fixed? Or is it something that eventually is going to have surgery and, hey, you can play through it. He's just got to deal with the pain. I mean, there's different levels to the injury. We don't know exactly what it is. I'm assuming it's some kind of AC sprain with the way that they were messing with it on the sideline. And this is making a complete guess, and I probably shouldn't do this. But just having seen other people have their shoulders get popped in and out type of thing, that's what it seems like he's having issues with. And you hope that he can get it fixed because you want to see him play to his potential. And he just hasn't been able to do it the first 2 weeks. One, he gets thrown out for the targeting penalty in the first game. This week, I think he plays like less than 10 snaps, and then he was out of the game because of the injury. The shoulder bothered him. He went to the sideline before the fourth down play, and then we never saw him again because he was out of pads and had his shoulder iced and had it in a sling. So you hope he gets healthy. But if he's not healthy, that's a big opportunity for someone like Corey Foreman. And I'm sure the coach is saying, Corey, just show us in practice. Show us every day what you can do. And then that way when you get to Saturday, you're like, this is easy peasy because I've been doing it against, Andrew Voorhees. I've been doing it against these guys that are veteran guys and been going against Bobby Haskins, who's played for 5 years at Virginia. Now you get to face a guy against Fresno State, and no offense to anyone from Fresno State, but it should be a little bit easier, because I don't know if they have any NFL prospects on the offensive line off the top of my head. So, show us in practice what you can do this week, and then maybe on Saturday he gets an opportunity to get in the game and goes out there and performs. That's what the coaching staff seems to be waiting on, and that's been the common theme whenever Corey Foreman's name is mentioned. Is we just got to see that consistency. We need to see him. We see the what he can do, but he's got to do it, every day in practice. And that's what I keep hearing from people around the program is that he's just not practicing well enough to be earning those reps right now.
Yeah. Well, we still got a full queue. Every time we drop a caller, and another one jumps in. So
sorry, I'll try to be quick.
Yeah.
We've you already mentioned a Dave from Iowa.
Bring him on in here.
He is on the line right now. Dave, what's going on? What do you want to talk about?
Hey guys, Dave from Iowa. First off, just want to say really impressed with the defensive line. They wreaked havoc against Stanford's offensive line. Very impressed. What do you think What do you think their performance means for defensive line recruiting? And second, now you guys were talking about last year and this year in terms of the Stanford game. The other thing I wanted to say was one thing I heard from last year and this year was about accountability. I understand Mekhi Blackman did get an interception. He did have 3 pass interference calls. Do you think he's going to be doing up and downs in practice because of that? Because again, Lincoln Riley said it's all about being accountable, right? What do you think?
All right.
I'll go with the Mekhi Blackman first. No, I don't think he'll be doing any up downs. Not only did he have an interception, he recovered a fumble. He had multiple pass deflections as well. He had the pass interference calls, and a couple of them were warranted, but it's a tough matchup. And it's not like he's grabbing because he's getting blown by or anything. He's in the position, just trying to make plays. It's not like he was just holding on for dear life, or it's not a taunting penalty, anything like that. Those are the penalties the coaching staff doesn't want. And I think you mentioned on the podcast just those penalties where you're being aggressive and trying to attack, and that's what he's trying to do: attack the ball, attack the hands, and try to make a play on the ball. And you see what it does on the fourth down play where he attacks, gets his hand on the ball, makes the interception, and takes it back. And if Tanner McKee doesn't make a tackle there, that's a 101-yard interception return for a touchdown. So I don't think he'll be doing any extra up downs or any punishments for having a couple penalties in that game.
And we looked at the one we were watching that wasn't.
Yeah, the second. I think it's the second one, second quarter up the left sideline, and he has his hands off the receiver, and he bumps him with his body a little bit, but the throw's nowhere close to it. It should never have been thrown a flag. So that one was a little bit out of control there. But there were a few that were I didn't think they were necessarily pass interference calls, and Stanford got them. So that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And as far as the second part of his question, really quickly with the recruiting, shout out to the Composite 2-Star Recruits podcast. Check it out. Absolutely. You have this film now through 2 games. There'll be more where you can be like, hey, this is a defensive front where we're making plays. We're top 10 in the nation in tackles for a loss. We lead the Pac-12 in sacks. We're getting to the quarterback. We're making plays. We're helping this defense create plays in the backfield with those turnovers. So you have film to show, but you also have a little bit of wiggle room to be like, hey, we do know we have some issues. We have some personnel issues, depth issues. We need to help shore up the run game. You could be that guy to help us. That's what you pitch to a T.A. Cunningham. Grant Buckey was in the stands watching the game, the Stanford game. They do need some defensive line recruits. They're going to find those defensive line recruits. But you do have the tape where you can be like, hey, look, come play in this defense. We're making plays in the backfield. We also need you because we need more bodies for our front. Early playing time is available. Come sign with USC. So you're getting that film where you can go put it on when they come to visit for, whether that's in December, or you can send them film to look at or show them for film or whatever, to be like, hey, you're going to be a guy in this defense. You're going to be a guy who can make plays for us, get in the backfield, and continue these big play moments for this scheme.
Okay, we got to put you guys on a shot clock. We have three in the call. We have 17 busy signals coming in. Like, there's a lot of people who want to get in.
Okay, real quick. Blackman was targeted 11 times in the game. The fact that you get targeted double-digit times is a lot in a game. Gave up 3 catches. So, he had 6 tackles as well, so I thought he played pretty well.
I did too. All right, let's go. I think this is Erica calling in. Thanks for calling in television. Let us know who you are and where you're calling from.
Oh, this is Eric. Calling from Salt Lake City, Utah.
Nice.
How's it going, Shotgun, Troy, and Chris?
Thanks for calling in. What do you want to talk about?
What do you think, Shotgun? What is your prediction on where USC is going to be ranked next weekend, as well as do you think USC is ready for Utah? Being Utah is doing pretty good.
Yeah, obviously Utah bounced back and beat up on Southern Utah. Should have won down in the swamp. Disappointing the way that game finished for them. But they're going to be a tough team for USC. That's a long way away, though, just because I feel like so much can happen in 3-4 weeks before that game comes up. Just as far as injuries and just as far as personnel can be completely different when that time comes. Looking at USC. They're ranked 7th in the AP poll. I think 8th in the coaches poll. Going into this game against Fresno State, and Fresno State they can't start looking ahead to Utah already because Fresno State's going to be a big challenge, and then going to Oregon State will be a big challenge as well. Both these teams played last night, late night game there, and was won by Oregon State on the final play of the game. Great back and forth action at the end of the game. The USC fans, you get a chance to find a replay of it and watch it just because that's your next 2 opponents. But I think both of them will be able to challenge USC the next couple weeks.
Next one.
All right, let's go. Looks like we got Andrew from San Diego. Andrew, thanks for calling in. What do you want to talk about?
2 questions. 1, is Fresno State a potential trap game? And 2, Brian, have you tried the triple ginger snap cookies from Trader Joe's? Because they are good. Thank you.
Thank you for the call. I haven't tried those, but I need to try them.
I know what he's going to talk about in the next Parastar podcast on Tuesday.
Sure.
It's gonna be like,
we have like a back room full of snacks because of they gave us a whole bunch of snacks for a tailgate. So, I'm always willing to try some new ones.
Trap game. Let's talk about it. Is it a trap game? I think Fresno State is a sneaky, tough opponent. They got a really good quarterback. Jeff Tedford is a good coach. That program has been really, respectable, good football. They get up to play USC because a lot of those kids are the kids that wanted to go to USC. They grew up Trojans. They wanted to be Trojans, but they're at Fresno State, and they are very passionate about football in that part of the country, that part of California. I know, I believe it was you or maybe it was Ryan that said they're maybe going to be a little bit let down after such a tough. That was Ryan.
That was
over
me.
there.
Yeah,
just after a tough,
heartbreaking loss to Oregon State at home.
I still think they're going to get up. This is the USC game. This is the game that I still think there's going to be some umph there. So I would say, don't go to the Coliseum thinking this is going to be a cakewalk for the Trojans. This is a tough one, especially when you have a big road game looming for the Beavers right behind them.
Yep.
Could be a trap game just because of the name Fresno State. If you just you don't look at the film, you just look at the name, say, oh, Mountain West, and you know that Oregon State could be a tough opponent coming up, you could say, oh, trap game.
Yeah. Let's go just on the street. Ted in Manhattan Beach, South Bay guy. Ted, what's going on? What do you want to talk about?
Just a quick question. I just want to ask if people are maybe getting a little overly concerned about the defense. I know they're making adjustments. I know we definitely need to improve in certain areas, but I think Shotgun brought up in the instant analysis, or you brought up actually, Ryan, that this is the first time they were using the long RPO, and it was something no one had seen before. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Go for it, Ryan. This is your topic of choice.
Yeah, so, Fresno State has Jake Haener, who's a star quarterback. He almost went to Washington, but then you bring in Jeff Tedford, who gave Pete Carroll fits in the beginning of his tenure there. So I feel like Fresno State is a really good football team. They will get up for big games like this. I think it just might be, it's a lot to ask to go from putting all your eggs into that Oregon State basket where you think you're going to win, and you just come up short at the end. Oregon State scores as time's run out on the clock. That's a tough one. That's a tough one to bounce back from. But I think they can. I think they have the potential to do that. But yeah, we will see.
I don't think that you're going to see, a brand new offense from Fresno State like you did at Stanford. So I think the defense will be more prepared for Fresno State. And Ryan was talking about it on the podcast that the Fresno State's offense is a little bit more basic, a little bit more of a common defense. Common offense. So because it's not something rare like the slow mesh, the long RPO, as you phrased it, then I think that USC's defense should be a little bit more prepared, and maybe we get a better assessment of where this defense actually is after this game.
Yeah, I think you're going to see. I think you saw what what Fresno State's offense was last week. It's not, they didn't hide anything. They're not, so there shouldn't be as many surprises, but it's going to be a tough offense. Haener was throwing some balls into some tight windows, so they're definitely going to test this USC secondary. We got one last call in the queue, and we'll get to some other questions. It looks like this is Brandon from Minnesota. Brandon, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, good. How about yourself?
Good, thanks. What do you want to talk about?
Question: do you think this game puts USC's line on the map, that people are going to actually start to respect them?
I think people that were watching this game, especially if you watch that first half before you're taking off for your night activities, if you're on the East Coast or whatever, then you're probably going, "Ooh, the USC team might be for real. This isn't a 2-year rebuild. This is a team that's ready to go right now." And Kirk Herbstreit mentioned it multiple times in that first half, because I haven't got to halftime yet in a rewatch after we got back to the studio. But you mentioned it that, yeah, this USC team looks like they're for real, and it's not something that's going to be a long-term thing. They're already back in the mix. Now, there are some things to clean up. There are some injury issues potentially for USC, so those things could hamper them down the line. But they've looked really good offensively the last 2 weeks, and the defense is making a ton of big-time plays. Now, can they, start raising the floor, as Lincoln said, on some of those bad plays and be more consistent? That's been the big issue for the defense so far.
Yeah.
You handle Oregon State on the road, I think that's when you will see the hype take another level.
I don't even know if that's going to do it, because if you're on the East Coast, you don't think Oregon State's anything.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's go to some questions from the chat box, and we'll try to go through these quickly. First up, this is Steven. Caleb seems to hold on the ball too much and tried to do the Russell Wilson backspin unsuccessful. Do you think the coaches will tell him to get the ball out quicker?
I think if you watched last night's game, you saw a lot of players slipping and stuff. Sometimes he wanted to get the ball out quick, and suddenly the receiver was on the ground. So I think that played into a little bit. I don't think he necessarily holds on to the ball too quick. You've seen a lot of quick passes in this offense the first 2 games. They've only tried to take a couple of deep strikes. He's letting plays develop, and the fact that he can then create on his own maybe allows him to do that, and maybe you have that concern. But with Lincoln Riley, I think he's probably going to be emphasizing that all the time, because Lincoln Riley doesn't want him taking hits. Lincoln Riley doesn't want him taking off running. He wants him to be a passer first. So I think that if he is doing that a little bit, I think Lincoln Riley's probably harping on him, hey, we got to get that out quicker. We got to get that out quicker here.
Yeah.
Remembering Caleb did say in the spring that he wanted to stay in the pocket a little bit longer, not just take off all the time. So I think that's a product of taking just an extra couple seconds, and he's got the protection at times.
Yeah,
they're holding up really well. They've got shotgun level, rant level time back there for him.
So-called dad, were the PI penalties on Blackman as well as the offensive PI on Rice only penalties the Pac-12 refs would call?
At least one was.
That one Blackman was. The offensive pass interference on Brendan Rice was definitely an offensive pass interference. You see clearly extends the arm. Didn't see it. I was shooting him on that play, shooting photos of him on that play, and didn't see it in real time, but then when you see the replay, it's pretty evident. So
he
the referees
seemed pretty bummed when he was getting up after that big. He knew. Like he was like, I've never seen a more disappointed big play catch. He was like, thank God.
Yeah. Let's go to. We got to do some Facebook ones too. Brandon, he wrote in and says, "Do you think this game may have pushed Caleb up into the Heisman race? He was like third odds to enter the season, like for the Heisman. So I think he's definitely."
I will be interested to see where his odds go after this game. because last week his odds got a little bit better. I think it went from like 100 to 1 to 75 to 1 or something. Or maybe that was Jordan Addison's, but both of theirs went up, got a little bit of bump up. Yeah, Caleb Williams was much higher, sorry. But both of those guys got a bump up, still behind Bryce Young, still behind C.J. Stroud. I think those two guys are the clear-cut favorites right now, and it's something that doesn't really matter at this part of the year. It's going to, by week 7 or 8, you start clearing out some of those names that are on those odds lists that they send us. Suddenly the list is right now like 50 people on it, that have odds, and some of those are like 2,000 to 1 or much higher than that. You're like, there's no way this guy. But somebody, that's when you get to your wide receiver, I'm blanking on his name, from Alabama, to be able to go and get it.
Trayshawn Holden.
No, the wide receiver that won the Heisman.
Devontae Smith.
Devontae Smith, yeah.
Climbing the list.
Out of nowhere.
Because wide receivers just don't win the award. So we'll see down the road, but he's definitely doing enough to keep his name up there. We'll say that.
Brendan also had another question. Let me pull this one up. Week 2 down, how do you think USC stacks up to other top 10 teams like Michigan or Clemson? USC was the only top 10 team to cover the spread this last week, so that was interesting.
Really interesting.
I haven't watched Michigan much. Clemson did not look good against Georgia Tech. Like they're having offensive issues and stuff. I would say the Michigans and Clemson's fine. If you want to talk about Alabama, you want to talk about Georgia, Ohio State. I don't know about that.
They don't have the
Alabama
lines.
didn't look that great, guys.
That's true.
Still
But anyone
Alabama.
else, I think you could,
It's still Bama.
they're flawed teams.
Yeah, and USC has flaws as well. So they're probably in that second tier. They're not in that top tier of teams. So somewhere around 7th seems perfectly reasonable right now.
Yeah.
Someone else asked in the chat, in the YouTube chat, why are they ranked behind Oklahoma? But probably because Oklahoma won last year much more than USC did.
Yeah.
So they started further ahead. And they've got a good quarterback. And I think the biggest difference in, you talk about Michigan, you talk about Clemson, is just quarterback play. Michigan is still trying to figure out their quarterback. They just named J.J. McCarty the quarterback for next week after having their trial for the first 2 games. DJ Uiagalelei has not been great for Clemson, unfortunately, because he's a great kid, and we like to see the Southern California kids do well. But they've got to figure that out at Clemson as well. So those are the teams that that are in that second tier because they don't have that elite quarterback play right now.
Yeah. We got a YouTube question from Brandon. Fresno State feels like a Rayleigh Brown breakout game. What you say?
I would say the opener was his breakout. I mean, the fact that everyone was talking about him after the opener, I think that usually means breakout to me.
You hit the Heisman. You had your little viral moment.
Yeah, that was pretty breakout.
I feel like if you're talking about breakout, maybe like over 100 yards or something like that. But
maybe something like that.
Pretty good opening for number 14.
Mm-hmm.
But
Steven,
if his ankle's good, maybe we'll see a little more.
He might have been slowed a little bit. We didn't see a ton of him on Saturday. Steven had a question. Were most of those audibles called by Coach Riley? He's not getting enough credit for the offensive explosiveness. I think he's getting a lot of credit. He created it all.
I mean, I think Caleb is part of that too. I mean, that's something that he's doing more in the second year of this offense. Him and Riley have this player-coach speak where they're kind of finishing each other's sentences. So I would not be shocked if a lot of that is on Caleb, making those calls as well.
Yeah.
He was asked about one specific one after the game, and Caleb was asked about him changing the play, and he's like, "That's actually the big dog over here," pointing to Riley. And then Riley quickly was like, "No, that's him." And that's the thing. It's such a cooperation between those two guys. They're talking about it, and there were some plays in the second half where Caleb's trying to call for a certain play as Riley's calling in the play. And I remember one, it was like a second down, and I think Caleb wanted to pass the ball or something. He wanted to attack a little bit more, and Riley called a more conservative call, it seemed like. And as he's walking away, Caleb's just throws his hand towards the sideline. Like, man, I don't like that call. I'm guessing they still ran. He still ran Lincoln's call, but it's interesting to see the dynamic between them. And if you didn't know how good of a relationship you had, you'd be like, "Oh, is this a quarterback that's not in tune with his coordinator or his head coach? What's the deal there?" But you can just tell when they talk about each other and they talk around each other how in sync they are together and how much they're collaborating on this offense. So I think some of the calls at the line of scrimmage are Caleb. You see a lot of hand signals with the wide receivers. He's reading certain things and making some adjustments, whereas Lincoln also, they'll do kind of the check with me type thing, and they'll look over the sideline. Sometimes they'll make a change to the play call that way too. So it's a little bit of both.
Oscar, he wrote in on YouTube, if the defense can hold the opponents to less than 30 points, do you guys think SC will win every game?
That's a really good question.
I think so. I would say yes.
Basically, you're saying, are they going to score 30 points a game? And there's going to be one game where they don't. There's going to be one game this season. Well, they'll be held to 28 points.
There'll be a weird game. But I bold predicted them to average 40 points per game, so I would say yes.
Yeah, nice. David Johnson, does Ryan still think that Stanford is butt? Yeah, I don't think they're very good, but the defense was bad. They're going to give up a lot of points, even the new front that they're running. The offense looks, even though they haven't changed the coaching staff, the offense, they got a lot of their skill guys back. They got big receivers. They're going to outscore some people, I think. But, now you're going to kind of see it. This was a surprise. So everyone else is going to know that you're going to be running this now. But I don't think they're going to be a very good team. I don't think they're going bowling or anything.
SoCal Dad asked an interesting question. Do you think Fresno is better than Stanford? Ryan, you would probably be able to answer that one best, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, they're different. I mean, it's 2 games in. I think it's hard to say. I think Fresno State's better than Stanford. They were like a 10-win team last year. But this one's going to be at home. But I think Stanford went into this one. Stanford did what like Fresno State was doing to Oregon State yesterday. They were throwing everything with the kitchen sink at it. So I think Fresno State's probably a better team. We'll see.
Ryan and I have a friendly lunch bet. I have Stanford going to a bowl game. He does not.
Right. So
who do you feels like on the worst end of that?
That's going to taste very, very good when we go to Big Walk. Facebook from Bob. Did David Shaw figure out Riley's offense at halftime? If so, will this continue for the rest of the season? Then we better score 60 in the first half, and then we only score 6 in the second half.
No, USC still moved the ball in the second half. They had 3 field goal attempts, so it's not like they were stopped 3 and out every time. I just think they got a little conservative, and I think this offense needs to be full throttle all the time to excel because you have so many playmakers, you have so many guys you want to get the ball to, that if you're not going full throttle, I think you lose a little bit of interest because you're not Drake London, so you're not getting the ball every single time, regardless if the offense is going really fast or slowing things down. So then if you're getting 1 out of every 8 throws, and those 8 throws are now coming over, an 8-minute stretch versus a 4-minute stretch, just based on the pace that you're playing in, I think you can lose an interest a little bit, kind of like a pitcher that, throws too many balls and the defense kind of loses interest and, makes an error behind them.
We got a couple quick injury questions. ISJST. Was Travis Dye hurt? He seemed to be holding his shoulder throughout the game.
I don't know where this one came from.
It was on a certain play. He came up really slow, and he did seem to favor his shoulder. I thought maybe he was going to come out, but he kind of just he got it really slow. He seemed to be holding his shoulder, but he kind of shook it off and was fine. I would say he's a little banged up, but no more than any running back who's taking hits.
And then every time I see a smaller player get driven into the ground, you're like, oh, that's like Max Williams on his interception. You go, ooh, is that going to be a shoulder issue? And you just kind of never know. But he after the game, he seemed perfectly in good spirits. So I don't think he didn't have his shoulder wrapped up or anything extra after the game. So I would assume that he will be good to go next weekend.
Bob on Facebook, did Brandon Peely play? If so, how did he do?
He did play.
Brandon Peely did play. He played a good amount of snaps as well. He can still be more impactful, and that's what you're looking for. But he's a big body, and he's their biggest big body in there. None of the nose tackles really stood out as far as Stanley Taufau. He made a couple of tackles in there, lost his helmet once again because that seems to happen at least once every game. Brandon Peely, same thing, made a couple of plays. I love seeing the effort you're seeing from Brandon Peely, chasing down plays that are a long way away from him and trying to make a play. He made one in the Rice game. I think it was the play that Romello Height was ejected on. It was a screen play, and he actually makes the tackle 14, 15 yards down the field. And that's just showing effort. And that's something that Brandon Peely struggled with a little bit, just consistently showing that effort and giving that effort all the time. So to see that so far in the first 2 games, I think is a real positive for USC.
Yeah. Andrew had a question. Sorry, trying to get through these quick. I know there's a lot of them. Is this the first Stanford game in 15 years where it looked like we won in the trenches?
I wasn't alive 15 years ago, so I can't answer that.
Yeah, that's hard. That's a long time.
That's a false statement, Chris.
I don't know. I wasn't here on this earth.
I think they won on the offensive line for sure, and the defensive line got a lot of tackles for loss. I don't know if they won, but
the game was Sua Cravens coming off the edge against was Kevin Hogan at the time. USC dominated that one. The one at the Coliseum, I thought they showed that was the what we always call it, the false barometer.
For Stanford, yeah.
Yeah, because USC was really good in the trenches in that game. And there were a couple others along the way there, but those were at the Coliseum. When they played it at Palo Alto, they've struggled in recent years.
Yeah. We got another one from Brendan. Do you think the first half put people on notice that USC's offense can score on anyone?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're certainly an offense that can score on anybody.
On anybody, maybe, but we haven't seen them play an elite defense like an Alabama or Georgia, but they can score. That's what I know.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, that's the questions I had marked down. Do you have any other ones, Shotty?
I thought a good question from A Dog's Life in Portland. After 2 games, which unit needs to improve the most?
I guess he means like specific position units.
Position unit, yeah.
I would say rush ends. I mean, I just don't feel like they're getting enough consistent. I mean, Solomon Byrd, obviously, I think has had the best game that any of the rush ends have had this season. Only 2 games, but I think you would need more consistent pressure off the edge and sealing that edge and things like that.
Yeah,
I think linebackers can still play much better, even though they've made a lot of plays. There's also some plays where they're just not in the right gap. Just being that consistent. Yeah. Consistent every play, and that's something that Lincoln Riley talked about after the game for the entirety of the defense is, making sure you're doing your assignment every single play. And, I think the linebackers, that's an area where they can still get better.
Eric Gentry did lead the team in tackles. He had double digits, which was good. Bob had a question on Facebook. Do you guys think Max Williams is an NFL caliber DB?
Ooh, that's a tough question.
That's a tough question. I mean, those kind of smaller nickel cornerbacks are becoming a thing in the modern NFL.
Yeah.
With all the passing, so there is definitely a role.
He's a football player.
He is a football player. He makes football plays. He has the high IQ. There's a reason why Alex Grinch, Lincoln Riley, everybody gushes about Max Williams. So I do think, obviously there could be a role. He's going to have good tape, you're going to see, but it's all about, I guess, the measurables. I think that'll hurt him in the draft process. But IQ, and I think his tape will speak a lot for him.
I think he's got to show some more athleticism just because the NFL, everyone is so big, so strong, so fast, where you can be super smart, but if you're not athletic enough, you just, you can't keep up with everyone. So that's the big area of concern there, but he is super intelligent. He makes a lot of plays. He makes up for the athleticism he lacks by being smarter than everyone else. So I think he'll get it. At the minimum, he'll be an undrafted free agent. He'll get a shot and he'll have his chance to prove himself in camp. And if he finds the right team, then he could be in the league for several years. Like Nickel Roby-Coleman, a guy who was an undrafted free agent out of USC, a little bit more athletic than Max Williams, but again, another smart player, ends up being a nickel guy in the NFL and played for several years and obviously helped the Rams get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, if he went undrafted and made the team, I'd be like, yeah.
I
wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Larry on Facebook. Based on the results from Texas A&M, Notre Dame, and Nebraska, do you think that USC can flip some commits?
If they keep winning, I think if they keep winning.
I don't think Nebraska has anybody committed that they want to flip.
Sure. Good point. But if they keep winning, I think anybody in the country, commit-wise, would take a phone call from Lincoln Riley and USC.
Yeah. I think you're already taking phone calls from them, but I don't know. I don't know this specifically. Like, Texas A&M's recruiting like gangbusters, so.
Just not playing like gangbusters.
Damn.
Yeah, they're not doing that. We got one from Jake on YouTube. Do you think that Damani, talking about Damani Jackson, has a shot to take over the CB2 spot when he returns? Seems like neither Sayer or Covington have locked it down.
I'm borderline getting over Damani questions.
Are you getting there?
I'm getting there.
This is what happens when you have 5-star and they're not playing. And he's got to get on the field. He hasn't, and we talked about this on the podcast a little bit. You can hear a little bit more in-depth answer there, but he hasn't been able to practice fully. He's coming off the knee injury. He missed his entire senior season, basically. So
missed all of spring.
He's got to practice. And once you practice, then you can start making your mark and then try to work your way up. So he's still behind a bunch of guys right now, not just those 2 guys that you mentioned.
Talent off the charts, physicality off the charts, but he's not on the field. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right now, his plan should probably be get healthy, be a special teams guy, maybe get some burn in a rotation. I'm not even talking about taking over a starting job at this point.
All right. So we at the 1 hour mark, for whatever reason, our graphics get cut off as far as putting up YouTube and Facebook comments. So we tried to put up as many as we could before that happened. It's just that always happens that way. I put up more after it, that I've queued some up. But are there any other questions that I missed, Shotgun, or any new ones that you guys want to talk about?
Steven want to know what happened to Taj Washington. Was he injured? He just didn't get any touches? I think it's just
the nature of the offense.
Yeah, the nature of the offense. There's so many guys in this that they're going to try to get the ball to. So he was not injured as far as we could see. So I don't think that's the thing. We had some questions about Fresno State, Oregon State. What do you think this Saturday is going to look like? How do you think USC will do against both? I'm going to save those for RJ and Ryan on Thursday. They're going to be your preview guys, so they'll get a chance to look at it a little bit more in depth. I haven't got a chance. I watched maybe 5 plays from that Fresno State, Oregon State game in the last, the last 3 more minutes of the game. So I can't really tell you too much about them more than what I would have known in the beginning of the season or before the season.
Yeah, we'll do a preview show on Thursday, just so you know. So it'll be Jack Smith will be back, and me and RJ Abadia doing the preview, just like we did for the preview for the USC Stanford game on Thursday. So that's live Thursday nights at 7 p.m., just like we're doing tonight, Sundays at 7 p.m.
Trek want to know, can you guys explain to me how USC got 5 sacks with the D line didn't get consistent penetration? I think part of that is USC did a lot of twists and stunts in this game, so that can be big plays, or it can end up, with being gashed at times because, you're trying to create confusion with the offensive line, but you're also vacating a spot to be able to create that confusion. So sometimes that happens. So I think that was the answer there.
Yeah.
Phil want to know, what are your thoughts on Sua Cravens putting the media's SEC bias on blast on Twitter? If you guys don't know, he said, before or yesterday after Texas A&M lost, he said if Oregon drops from basically to being unranked after losing the number 2 team, where should Texas A&M drop? They should be out if they lose to Appalachian State, and I would agree with that. Now I would say 49-3 is a little bit different than being a close loss, but also there is definitely still some bias. But Texas A&M and Oregon are 24 and 25 this week, so I don't think there's that much of a difference.
Yeah, that's kind of down on the bottom there. But you're right. If you doing that for Texas A&M, if there was a Pac-12 team, they wouldn't be ranked. So.
Andrew, is Taylor Mays an intense coach or more laid back? I would say he's more laid back. That just seems more like his personality. He's much different off the field as he was on the field as a player. Andrew also asked, is Chris a comic book T-shirt guy?
Specifically a T-shirt guy? Yes, I have a bunch of comic book T-shirts. I collect comics as well.
Rick want to know what adjustments can be made on the interior defensive line if teams are going to continue to attack us there. One would be to get healthy. That would be a good start.
That helps.
But the different things that you can do is you attack with your linebackers a little bit more towards the interior. You put an extra defensive lineman out there. So there's some adjustments that can be made there, but that then affects the rest of your defense as well. So if you put an extra defensive lineman in there, then you're taking the nickel back off. They did use some different sets where they had 3 linebackers out there, maybe even 4 linebackers for the big sets that Stanford had last night, bringing Tuasivi Nomura on there. You bring in bigger linebackers. You bring in bigger defensive linemen. So there's different things where you can use different personnel to try to attack it as well. And then Steve said Herbie was very focused, Kirk Herbstreit, on the size of Coach Riley's play sheet. What do you think is actually on that play sheet, since it can't be all of the plays?
Recipes.
He has a very small piece of paper that he goes over. What do you think's on there?
I zoomed in, and so this is breaking. I need the breaking news. So I looked at it. It said milk, sugar, eggs. It was apparently from his wife. It was what he has to buy. So all of it's in his brain. He doesn't need that card at all.
What if those were the play calls name, like milk, sugar as the joke?
That'd be great.
Could be. I mean, if you guys go back to the segment that I think Fox did with him, where he has the memory where he can remember what plays in certain games and stuff, and the down and distance, all that type of stuff, what happened. But his wife says that he struggles to remember the grocery list, so maybe it just is the grocery list there. No, I think that they have they run a lot of things off of things, and they make adjustments as they go, it seems like. So, I think it's not that a giant play sheet, and maybe, like Ryan says, he's got it all in his head, and as long as Caleb has it all in his head, then those two guys combined, you can make a lot of magic happen.
Not quite an elephant head with all those.
Always got to bring it up. DFI, what do you think of Wazoo after they beat Wisconsin, top 20 team with always good offensive line, defensive line?
Don't overreact. They needed an interception in the end zone to beat Idaho at home the week before. Then they go on the road and beat Wisconsin, who, I think Washington State's defense looked good. Jake Dickert's defensive-minded coach. Cameron Ward, I thought would be electric. He's not played that well. The quarterback transfer, the FCS transfer from Incarnate Word. So don't overreact. I didn't want to overreact to the Idaho game, but that didn't look good. I'm not going to overreact to them beating Wisconsin. We'll see, but they're on the schedule. They come to the Coliseum, so
hey, that's still a big win. That's going the road.
It's a big win.
10 for a Pac-12 team that doesn't get a lot of respect, or a conference that doesn't get a lot of respect against a big smash mouth football to a kind of more spread them out kind of offense. So
yeah,
hats off to them for picking up.
It's definitely a big win for the conference. The conference needs some wins.
In Idaho, the Fighting Juliana Falanikos.
Yes,
he started for Idaho in that game and had 4 or 5 tackles.
Nice.
Ryan's orbiting article taught me that last week.
That'll be coming up.
Celios asked, if USC played Utah next week, how would the offensive defense do against the Utes? They don't. So I don't like hypothetical questions. And then I think the last one, Alan wanted to know, are there any candidates for potential position changes if D-line depth becomes an even bigger problem? I don't think there's a Max Gibbs on this team that you're going to flip over necessarily. So I think you're a little bit more constrained there. They still have some more bodies, though. Kobe Pepe has not played. Earl Barquette has not played. So there are some more scholarship bodies that just haven't played so far. But they need those guys to step up. That's the big thing. Is you got to get the guys that are down the list a little bit to start making some plays in practice and start working their way up the depth chart if you have some injuries.
Waiting for the big freshman Devin Tompkins, who is legit 6'6",
He's
260. He's a big one. Obviously, very raw basketball player. Didn't start playing high school football until his senior year, so very raw. But if it starts to click for him, I would expect to see him, given his size and physical
just
ability.
Looks so different from last year when we saw him. SoCal Dad want to know, why is Jordan Addison returning punts instead of Gary Bryant? Have you seen Jordan Addison with the ball in his hands? That's probably why.
Yeah,
that would be mine.
Just as electric.
Yes. All right. Well, let's wrap things up, guys. Thanks to everyone if you tuned in. I think we had over 630 people on YouTube watching. So hit that like button, subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, thank you very much. If you're watching on Twitter, thanks very much. If you're watching a replay on any of those platforms or listening to the podcast version of this, thanks for doing that as well. It's been awesome to see how the show's grown and the audience getting bigger and everything. So we appreciate that. We try to put some work into this. We want to make it a special show for you guys, and all the questions, all the calls, all that really makes it worthwhile. So I know you guys are excited. USC football is exciting again. USC's football is fun to watch. And it's fun for us, too. We cover the team. It's way more fun when you guys care about it than if we're writing stories and you're like, I don't care. Clay Helton's head coach, blah, blah, blah. Props to Clay Helton, too, for getting a big win in Nebraska, getting Scott Frost fired. So completely reversal of a year ago. So props to him. I know some of the fans aren't going to want to hear that, but good on Clay to get a win for Georgia Southern in Nebraska, of all places.
And thanks to everyone for shouting us out while we're on the sidelines or on the way to the stadium. Everyone telling us what they enjoy, what they dislike, all those things. We love interacting with you guys. We're at the games as much as we can in between working and whatnot. So thanks for all the shout outs and for everyone yelling down to us from the stands and whatnot. We really appreciate it. And if you're not a member, go sign up. I mean, you got VIP content, not just the stuff that you can see here that we're giving you, but Chris has got his Ghost Notes game day.
Those are so good.
You got all the inside intel on what we're seeing on the sidelines there. I'm putting a couple of things in there to add to it. We got some takeaways almost immediately after the game, within like an hour of the game, some instant takeaways there. So make sure you're getting the VIP content and all the recruiting stuff. If you're into recruiting, that's almost all VIP as well. So make sure you're signing up if you're not a member of the site, and then you can join the P, which is the largest group of USC fans in the world in one combined space outside of on Saturdays in the Coliseum. Is on the P every day, and there's so many comments and threads and stuff going there that it can take up your entire day if you try to read everything. What's the famous line, Ryan? USCfootball.com has been decreasing
workplace productivity since 1996. So that's what we try to do.
It's a true statement.
It's so many people came up to me at the game, and it's usually a guy and his wife is like, oh, he's the site that I read all the time, and then I always apologize. Sorry, I've taken your husband's time away or whatever. Not always the husband, but it kind of works both ways. But yeah, and you can sign up for $1, VIP access for $1. So if you're not a member, jump in there. There's no reason not to be. Exciting time around USC football.
I had someone come up to me and say, wanted to explain and point out Chris and I to his wife because say 24/7. They're the ones that you see on the credit card charge every month.
Nice. So there we go. But we appreciate that. Thanks for all everyone out there for listening, watching, being a subscriber, all of that.
Can I shout out Chris?
Of course.
He's probably watching. During halftime, he came, shook my hand. I said, "What's your name?" He said, "I'm also Chris." I was like, "Great name."
Chris.
Hope he's watching. If he's watching, shout out to you.
Shout out to Chris.
Hope you had a good time of the game.
We did have a whole bunch of people came up to us up there on the farm, so that was really cool. Thanks for coming to say hello. It was great to see. But that's Shotgun Spratling, Chris Trevino. I am Ryan Abraham. Hope you enjoyed the show. We're back on Thursday for a preview show for USC, but Fresno State. But we will talk to you guys next time.